Hi, it's Cara Brown, and this is Watercolor Conversations. It's a place where I share my love of watercolor and my seeking, my teaching, my discoveries, the connections I see, and just in general what it's like to be alive at this time here on planet Earth. I hope that this meets a part of you that's longing to be met. Thanks for being here. Hi, it's Cara, and I have a different episode for you today. Not only is it a little outside the box of what I normally share, although only partly, it is a combination of 3 different posts that I did back in 2017. I am going to share about a section of the Bible. And even just saying that word makes me squirm a little inside thinking, what are you going to think about this? But I'm on a path. I'm on a spiritual path. And maybe you've already picked up on that if you've been listening to these episodes. My seeking started in my 30s with New Age spirituality, but in my heart of hearts, I find nourishment and support on a form of the Christian path. And this really makes me want to explain that uncomfortableness there, what kind of Christian I see myself as. It's not what I commonly think we think when someone says they're Christian. My family's roots were certainly Christian. My parents were both raised Catholic, but our family celebrations around Christmas and Easter, nobody even talked about Jesus. We celebrated the Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny versions of those holidays. Yet I've been so compelled to discover for myself the wisdom, the beauty, and useful practice in the tradition that has come out of the remarkable life of a man called Jesus of Nazareth. And some of what I've discovered is astonishingly different, maybe even better for me anyway, from my early life's understanding of Christianity. I've come to understand that there are beautiful teachings that affirm the goodness in human beings, and these teachings nourish my spiritual self. Some of what I've learned is soundly rejected by those who follow traditional beliefs, but they are what is true to me and what meets me in my heart. I'm not all the way in as some others are. I hold on to my rational, figure-it-out mind when I consider who Jesus was and is. And yet I deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate that in his time on the earthly plane, he was an enlightened, incredibly loving wisdom teacher whose teachings are as relevant and useful today as ever. If not, why would we be talking about him 2 millennia later? Just doesn't make sense. I've also never read the Bible to any great extent, and I don't have much of a relationship with it, except for one section, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, and it's called the Beatitudes. I do have a relationship with the Beatitudes. I was introduced to them on a trip to Cuernavaca, Mexico in 2003, led by the pastor of the church I was attending at the time, Sarah Vurick. We spent 10 days with the Benedictine sisters there and met and visited with people in the area who were living in crushing poverty. They also took us to a church in the center of Cuernavaca where the Beatitudes were engraved on a large exterior wall in a courtyard surrounded by a garden. Blessed are those with the spirit of the poor, I read. We were told of how central these words, spoken by Jesus in his Sermon on the Mount, are to supporting the faith of those who live in such incredibly oppressive poverty all throughout Latin America. And then a few years later, my mother-in-law, Evelyn, gave me a book called Reading Jesus, A Writer's Encounters with the Gospels by Mary Gordon. And I think it was her relationship with the Beatitudes that helped me fully form mine. She writes, "For many days I write and rewrite these words by hand, and then I am paralyzed, struck dumb, afraid to write, silenced by the depth of my attachment to them, silenced at the example of sheer moral greatness and the sense that after these words, there is, perhaps should be, nothing to say. She later writes movingly about the second one. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. She calls herself a perpetual mourner, having lost her father when she was a child. This beatitude speaks of the dignity, the duty even, to allow our pain as we mourn our losses, knowing that comfort is at hand. The Beatitudes are each a paradox. Amidst what we'd think of as lesser is really something far greater. I named a painting of hydrangea flowers Beatitude on the same plant at the very end of the season, December, in Northern California, in my parents' yard, are both the dying leaves and the still radiant flowers. The name came to me even before starting the drawing of the painting, the duality of death and life. It also occurred to me that these teachings from this man who lived 2 millennia ago could use a higher profile now. So I've done something that seems a little audacious. I've interpreted these 8 teachings from my point of view as one who creates and supports others in doing their creating too. I'm certainly not the first to do this, but every other interpretation that I found on the internet was done by some kind of a pro, those who make their lives in this tradition, including the former Pope Francis. It's scary to do this, to reveal this aspect of myself, but doing scary stuff is where life is really lived, and it is what Jesus did. I hope that reading how I see these ancient teachings, looking through the experience of bringing forth creative expression in some way, touches and feeds and supports your creative soul. So there are 8 of these, and I will say what Jesus said, and then I will tell you my interpretation of that for those of us who are making art, and a little bit more than that, a little illumination. The first one is, Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom in heaven." And I say, you're blessed when you first come to making art. Without any know-how and afraid to take the first step, you are opening yourself to a whole new experience of being alive. We all start at the beginning. Not one of us comes out of the womb with a paintbrush in our hand. We come to making art for the first time without any idea how it's done. And there's no way we could until we've tried. There's an innocence, a freshness when we first begin. We have no idea what is to come. To begin requires that we be open and receptive to the art that is to come from us. Because when you take it seriously and you make art making a regular practice, when you witness the stream of creations coming through you, your concept of yourself will change forever. And I think we should really try to retain this openness as we gain skills and competence, which may be even harder to do. Competence gives us confidence, which can tend to have us think that we know. So a perpetual cultivation of beginner's mind is what keeps us and our work evolving, growing, and coming into its fullness, which to me is the kingdom of heaven right here on earth. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." I say you are blessed when you feel deeply, when you let your heart feel the pain of your own life and the pain of the world. Then your deepest self is revealed in your art. We have an emotional, feeling heart. It surrounds the physical heart in our chest, the heart that pumps the blood out to the rest of our body. This emotional heart is both tender and it is indestructible. The hurts and disappointments in life can teach us to kind of shield this and conceal this emotional heart. But the blessing comes when we let this heart touch and be touched. Because it's where we experience pain and loss, as well as awe, wonder, and it's how we see incredible beauty. When we allow this heart to truly feel, we build its capacity. When we can withstand our own sufferings, we can then also take in the suffering of the world. Creative expression often is inspired, it's generated by the suffering that we've allowed our hearts to feel. Think of all the human stories of great loss that led to making a difference. A famous example is Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, but there are lots of them. I know that I'd not be making this art and living this life if I hadn't gone through the disappointment that I'd never be a mother. When we have ready access to this heart, it serves our art making. This is the way, that's the instrument that we receive the messages of what our art is, what materials, why I love watercolor, what subjects, why I am endlessly interested in painting flowers, and what colors. It guides our choices. It feeds our voice. It's the compass. It's the needle that goes back and gets excited when we are where we are meant to be. So we follow this instrument, this heart, when we share with the world the message that is ours to bring through our art. Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." I say you are blessed if you are humble in your creative process. When you do, your authentic voice shines through most brightly. This one brings to mind something that I learned from a friend of mine who has passed away, Ruth Schweitzer Mordecai. I used to go to church with her in Fairfax with Sarah, and she gave me an understanding of the word humility. She said humility is a healthy relationship with our sense of self. Our regard for ourselves isn't either too high or too low. We honor and accept our gifts and our shortcomings as they are. I hear people say frequently that they have no talent, but the gift of creating isn't bestowed upon you or not with a magic wand. Because you are alive, you have the capacity to create. Holding that you do, believing that you do have the capacity to create provides the courage to step in and give it a go. I believe that the art that comes through us has a life of its own. So I find it odd to take full credit for it. I believe that we become the art's channel rather than its creator. And it is when we allow this process that our art becomes a reflection of both who we are as well as something we'd never have imagined. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." I say, you're blessed when you have a great desire, a hunger to create. This is the fuel for your learning and creating. More than talent, more than experience, more than anything else, the desire to create determines what happens in our art-making lives. It is what gets us into our first class. It's what gets us to sit down or stand up and actually do our craft. It's what gets us through the often challenging learning process. It's what endures the self-criticism and fears. In one of Julia Cameron's books, she's the author of The Artist's Way, I read a quote attributed to Renoir. It went something like, "My urge to paint is as persistent as my urge to pee." This is a bit earthy, but it definitely makes the point. When I first read this, I wished for my urge to paint to be that strong, and it's a wise wish. I never have experienced the desire to paint quite that urgently. It's more that if I'm away from my painting for too long, I get really cranky. I now have the clear sense that there is a body of work that has come through me and continues to come through me. I'm in the process of this emergence. It very well could be that our desire to paint is the art's desire wanting to come through us. So if you long for anything, if you pray for anything in becoming an artist, the most important is to have the flames of your desire grow. It's where it all starts, and it's how it's sustained. Jesus said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." I say, you're blessed when you're gentle with yourself and others while in the process of learning and creating, for you will enjoy the process so much more and are likelier to stick with it. Making art is hard. Learning something new tests us. We are forming new connections between our hands and our brains, observing the results, practicing, fine-tuning. Our egos really prefer to do things that we're really good at already. So when we are in the sometimes clumsy early stages of learning, we expose ourselves to judgment from inside and out. Unfortunately, to our egos, there's no way around the learning process. You can't make the art of someone who has painted 1,000 paintings until you've painted 1,000 paintings. Even once you've gained a certain level of skill, if you stay alive in your work, continuing to explore and experiment, you continue to risk. What I want for you is to consistently tell yourself that you are doing your best at your current level of ability and inspiration. Remember that as long as you're painting with your highest intentions, you and your artist companions are right on track. Being kind and gentle to your creative self is how to keep yourself coming back again and again to the challenge that is making art. Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." I say, you're blessed when you follow your heart in your creative endeavors, when you do not allow your heart to be divided by outside influence, and when you trust that your art is perfect and precious, for no one else will ever make the art that is in you. I believe that we don't choose what and how to create, rather that it chooses us. We don't choose what we're drawn to. We love what we love. We are interested in what we are interested in. Following what allures you is being pure of heart. We're always tempted to be influenced by the voices of other people, often including the words should or shouldn't, especially when we're starting out. We may be inclined to have those voices lead us off our unique path. Anything that comes your way as you create, instruction, including from me, other artists' processes, others' art, it's all there to serve you and your process. Trust yourself. Trust what you like and don't like. You and only you hold the vision for your art. When you follow this vision, you create something that no one else in all of time will ever make, the art that only you can bring into the world. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." I say you're blessed when you are at peace with the imperfection in all things, including your art and process. In doing so, you embrace the sacredness of all acts of creation. Making art may not seem as treacherous as other aspects of living a human life, but on the inner plane, it certainly can be. Just look at the history of tortured artists plagued with addiction and mental illness and self-mutilation and all kinds of awfulness. The tumultuous inner life of art makers calls for a peace that surpasses all understanding. This inner peace comes from a trust in something much greater than us, and it is well worth cultivating. Let ego drama pass by, stay with yourself and your precious desire to make what you make. If you really think about it, where exactly does this desire to paint, to paint specifically this flower or this face or this patch of earth come from? Where does any idea, inclination, or inspiration come from? It has to be from some divine source, some metaphysical place or energy. Operating with a trust in this source takes our small self out of the picture. At this level, we are following divine orders, and I say orders in quotes. It may seem like we are simply putting brush to paint to paper or canvas, but we are actually making manifest, making real, something that wanted to become real, tangible, that we could put our hands on through us. And lastly, Jesus said, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." I say you are blessed when you move beyond the opinions of others about your artwork. In doing so, you free yourself as an artist. Because of our uniqueness, we have a certain strangeness to other people, and with this can bring a kind of loneliness. As much as we need each other for support, to be cheered on as we work, at the most basic level, if it is to be our own work, we must make it alone, on our own. There will always be those who don't get it, who will dismiss our art or even dislike it. It helps to remember what is said about our art comes from an entirely separate universe of human reality. Author and coach Tara Sophia Moore says that feedback, negative and positive, is 100% about the giver of it. At some level, it's none of our business what someone else thinks of our art. And this is the culmination of all the other 7 of these beatitudes for artists. When we open ourselves to making art, when we allow ourselves to fully feel what we are here to express, when we have appropriate humility about our art, when we heed our desires to create, when we are gentle with ourselves as we learn and grow, when we have the courage to trust in our singular vision and cultivate an inner peace about it all, then we set ourselves free from how anyone else may see and think of what we make. This is a never-ending process. The voice that tells us we are ill-equipped, that we don't have clue one as to what we are doing, is always there and can pop up at any moment. We operate in the face of it, and creation happens anyway. It's scary to make our mark. People will see what we've done and possibly judge it and judge us. The kingdom of heaven is there for us regardless. As artists, we step into the flow of creation. We become the channels, the vehicles for what is unmanifest to become real through us, our eyes, our hearts, our cameras, pencils, brushes, and paints. We then speak with a voice, our artistic voice, that says what we alone are here to say. I want to share how grateful I am for a woman who was in my life for 10 years, Sister Mary Neal. She's no longer on this earth anymore. She was a brilliant thinker and guide. She was a Dominican nun, and she was my spiritual director. No one on earth affirmed me the way that she did, as thoroughly as she did, because especially of my Christianness. She was the one who could hold this for me in a world that didn't feel like there was any other place for it. She helped me understand more fully the essential meanings in Jesus' Beatitudes so that I could find my way to my interpretations of them. The guidance and companionship she brought to my inner life parted the waters for me in the growth of my consciousness and in my spiritual wayfinding. She was the bridge between my self-doubt and my capacity to believe that making these paintings is indeed God's work. My Sister Mary, I carry your love with me always. To you who may be hearing this, I offer you blessings to your artist self that you may be set free. I send you off to create with that freedom and that courage and with all my love. Till next time, bye-bye.